let's go and get the very first value. You just say Tom Smith, and then inside of brackets you just put a 0, and that's how easy that is. And if we reload this, you can say first index is Tom Smith. It's very easy to add values. You just go Tom Smith, and then you would type in whatever the next index in the row would be, and then you could put something like an email address or something like that for our array. You can also overwrite values. So let's come in here again, Tom Smith. And in this situation, what we want to do is overwrite index 2 and fit everything else after index 2 without overwriting. So you're going to see exactly what I mean here, and we're going to do that with a tool called Splice. So I'm going to override index 2. And then I'm going to put 1 inside of there, which means I only want to override one thing. So it said start at index 2 and override index 2, or one thing. And then it'll make everything else fit inside of there. And then I can come in and throw a whole bunch of different data pieces inside of here. So let's say I wanted to put Pittsburgh and PA inside of there. I could also come in here and delete the 4th index with Splice. So we'll just go Splice again, and we'll say 4 and 1. And once again, this is going to represent the index we want to delete, and the 1 here says we only want to delete one thing. So that's how that works. We can also come in here and convert this array into a string, actually in 2 different ways. So we can just go array like this, and then to convert it into a string, we would just go Tom Smith again, and we could say value of, or we could use the toString method of doing this. So this could be either toString or value of. Does the same thing, converts an array into a string. And also let's come in and convert an array into a string using a separator. So let's just go array again, and here what we're going to do is we'll say Tom Smith and join, and this is going to allow us to define that we want to put a comma and a space between each little part inside of there whenever it converts the array into a string. And if we reload it, you can see it does exactly that. So there's Tom Smith and his address and Pittsburgh, PA. You can see that we added all those guys together. And then once again here we're defining with the comma and the space instead. So it's a little bit neater for us to look at. It's also very easy to come in and delete an index. So we can go Tom Smith, and let's say we want to delete the 3rd index. There we go, that's gone now. Sorting is also going to be very easy for us. Just type in sort, and we could type in reverse instead, and that would give us our reverse sort. However, this is going to be a sorting based off of alphabetical or letters instead of numbers. So if we wanted to do a sort based off of numbers, what we would do, first I'm going to come in here and create a brand new array. Now let's go and mess them up, of course. So how you would number, or how you would sort numbers inside of JavaScript is you're going to type in sort, and then you're going to come in here and go function x, y, and then you go return x minus y. And there's some math that goes into this calculation, but basically it's just saying it's going to be starting with sorting from 1 and then proceeding up with every value that comes thereafter. If you wanted to instead sort in descending order, you would put the y here and the x here, and this is just defining how these values are going to be compared to each other. So this is descending sorting, and this is ascending sorting, and that's just for numbers. And let's just output this just so you can see exactly what this looks like. So number array like that, and then just to show you the other way of converting the array into a string, we'll go numbers, and then we'll go toString. And if we reload it, you can see that it did indeed come in there and sort those properly. Now for some reason, if you'd like to come in here and combine these 2 different arrays together, you can just go var, and let's call this combined array. And to combine the numbers array with the Tom Smith array, we would just go concat or concatenate, which is the same thing as joining, and then throw Tom Smith in there, and there you go. Now they are combined. You could also come in, let's say you then wanted to remove the last item from the Tom Smith array. You could do so by just going pop, and that's going to remove just the last item. You also would be able to add items to the end, and to do that, you just go Tom Smith and push, and then let's throw some things on here like telephone number or something, and that would push those items onto the end of our array. You could come in and delete just the first item by using shift, and you could also come in and add items to the first index or the very beginning of the array with unshift. And then let's say we wanted to put Tom Smith in there again or whatever. Now we'll be able to come in here and cycle through all these items. I'm just going to use a for loop here, and we can go I is equal to 0, and while I is less than, and we wanted to do Tom Smith, and then we can go length like that. going to cycle through it as long as there are items that we can work with. We want to increment that, and then we can come in and print that information out. So we'll say Tom Smith and throw the value of I in there, which is incrementing. And if we reload it, you can see everything pops up there on our screen. So there you go, guys. That's a whole bunch about how to use arrays inside of JavaScript. Now let's jump over and take a look at functions. Now, functions are going to allow you to eliminate repetitive code as well as provide for code reuse, so you can reuse code over and over again. And to define one, you just say function, and I'm going to create one here that's actually kind of useful. I'm going to define a function that's going to check if a value is inside of an array or not, and I'm going to call it inArray. And these are the parameters that are passed into it. So array to check, there's going to be an array passed into it. And then there's going to be a value passed inside of it, and it's going to use a for loop to cycle through the different values inside of the array and see if it can find the value that we're looking for. So array to check, and let's do length, and then we'll increment this value as well. And then we'll throw an if statement inside of here, and very simple. I'm just going to say array to check and take the incremented value like that, and then we're going to verify that the value is in there. If it is inside of there, we're going to say return true, which means true is going to be passed back as a value for whatever called this function. And you're going to see in a second what that looks like. And then if we get the whole way through here, before the function ends, this is the end of the function right here. If we get that far, that means we checked everything and we can return a value of false in that situation. And now, based off of that, we can call this function for it to execute and say something like inArray. And then to call or execute the function, we would just go in array like this. Pass in the random array. Actually, let's create the random array first. So variable rand array. So random array is passed inside of there. And then let's see if we want to check to see if the value of 4 is inside of there or not. And if we reload it, you can see that that comes back as true. However, if we would come back and put a 6 inside of there, you can see that comes back as false. So there's an example of a function with a whole bunch of things inside of there that actually does something useful. One thing that's very important to understand is, let's say that we have a function like this. Let's just call it times 2. It's just going to get a number, and it is going to return whatever is passed inside of it times 2. So let's go 2 like this, and then once again we're going to return the num passed inside of it times variable 2. There's good reason why I went inside of here and defined this right here rather than just typing 2 inside of there. I want to talk about something called a local variable. Now we have var2 right here. Let's see what happens if we try to print var2 out on our screen. So that should be pretty easy, right? So we'll go var2 like this, and we'll save that and reload it. Up, you can see nothing came back, and you can see down here in the console, var is not defined. var2, this guy right here, is what is called a local variable, which means it lives inside of this function. It doesn't live or exist anywhere outside of that function. So just be aware of, if you define something inside of a function, that doesn't necessarily mean it can be accessed outside of that function. Another thing that is useful is we will be able to pass functions inside as a parameter. So let's just create another one of these guys. Let's call this times 3 in this situation. Again, it's going to receive a value like this, and then it's going to return whatever was passed inside of it times 3 like this. Now what we're going to be able to do is come in here and create another function. And let's call this multiply, and it's going to be able to perform multiple different calculations based off of the function passed inside of it. So there that is. This doesn't need to be called func. It can be called anything. I just called it func. Now what it's going to be able to do is go return and use that function that was passed inside of there to perform operations on the number that was passed inside of there. And you're going to see here, if we would go 3 times 15 is equal to, we could then come in and go multiply and pass in times 2 as well as 15, and we could also come in and do the exact same thing for times 3. And if we reload that, you're going to see that they perform different calculations. That's extremely useful to be able to pass functions around inside of there. Another thing we can do is we can create things called functions expressions, function expressions. And let's just go in here and create this. Let's call it triple is equal to function num, and then all this is going to do is return num times 3. What this is simply doing is assigning the function to the variable. What's really cool about this is you'd actually be able to take this function right here and store it inside of an array. So you could have an array of functions that you could cycle through and perform different operations with, which is really kind of neat. So for example, let's come down here and let's use this again. Let's just paste this inside of there, and you could say that let's just change this to 45 is equal to multiply, and then here we'll change this to triple and pass 45 inside of there. And much like this other calculation we performed, you can see that we can perform that calculation as well. Another thing we can do is we could actually return, let's just keep this all on the same page, we could actually receive a variable number of arguments into our function, so we have no idea how many arguments are getting passed in, and we'll be able to still work with them. We don't put any parameters inside of there in this situation. Create a variable called sum, give it a value of 0 to start off. Now we're going to create a for loop, and we can go while I is equal to 0 to start out, and we're going to cycle through as long as we have arguments to work with. And to access the arguments that are passed into getSum, we have no idea how long they are, but we can go arguments get length like this and find out, and we'll be able to cycle through all those different guys as long as they exist. And we could do something like sum plus is equal to, and then to access the arguments, we can go arguments I, and then of course after we get outside of this we could return the value for sum, and then jump down here and let's call this just to prove that it does indeed work. So we could say sum, and here we're going to call getSum, and there we are. Now close that off and reload, and you can see it performed those calculations even though it had no idea how many of these numbers were going to get passed inside of it. You'd also be able to come in here and return a variable number of arguments by using an array. So let's create another function. Let's call this times2. So times2 like this, and let's just have an array gets passed inside of times2. Create a new empty array is equal to, and there's an empty array for us to work with. And then we're going to create another for loop, and we're going to go I less than the array, so the total number of array items inside of here, and we're going to cycle through all of them. And now we can go new array and push on to the end of my array all of those different values on there times2, and then of course after we're done we can return the array. Now we'll be able to go document write, and we'll say something like array doubled, and now we'll be able to come in and go times2, and then we can pass an array variable name or whatever we want. I'm just going to keep this simple, and let's say we want to convert it into a string so we can print it out on the screen. You'll be able to see it nice, and reload it, and you can see that it went and doubled every single item in that array and printed it out on the screen. And the final thing I'm going to talk about are recursive functions. And a recursive function is just a function that calls itself, and the best example of this is calculating factorial. So a number is going to be passed inside of this guy, and to calculate a factorial, what we're going to do is we're going to say if num that's passed inside of it is less than or equal to 1, we're going to return a value of 1 from that guy. Otherwise, I have to go else, we are going to return number times, and we're going to call the function factorial again for number minus 1, and that's going to allow us to be able to perform factorial calculations. So we could say something like factorial of 4, and then call factorial and pass in the value of 4 for this. So I'm going to show you exactly how this is working here in one moment. And if we reload it, you can see the factorial of 4 is equal to 24, and you can see right here exactly how that is going to operate. So the very first time it goes through the factorial function, right like this, it's going to have a value of 4. That value of 4 is going to end up being right here for the num, and then it's going to have factorial of 3 is going to be passed in because this is 4 minus 1. And this is going to continue on and on and on right up until the point in which the factorial of 1 is passed in. Then it's going to sort of climb back upside the ladder. So it got to the end. It's not going to call a factorial function again, and every factorial function has to have a way out. That's the way out right there. So you can see right here, 2 times 1 is going to give me a value of 2. This 2 right here is going to go up here. Then we're going to have that multiplied times 3 to get a value of 6. That 6 is going to jump up here, which is going to be multiplied times the original number passed in called 4. And that's going to give us our final value. So there is a whole bunch of ways to work with functions inside of JavaScript. Now I'm going to talk about event handling. Okay, so I'm going to cover a lot about event handling because that's very, very important. So we're going to create a function here, and I'm just going to call this open alert. And I'm going to do some inline JavaScript, and then we'll call some functions and do all kinds of other different things. And this alert is going to get a message, and it's going to open up that message in an alert. And if you want to get access to all of the different events you could find, here is a link to that, and I'll of course have that in the description so you'll be able to jump over there and look at all the different events, but I'm going to show you a ton of them in this tutorial. So let's say that we wanted to come in here and we'll create a link, and this link is going to call some JavaScript code to execute. What you're going to want to do is first off go JavaScript and :void and 0 like this, and then we're going to say on click. So whenever they click on this link, we want to call our alert function and have it execute. So this is a way of calling outside JavaScript for it to execute, and I'll show you some inline Java as well. So let's just say hello like this, and then we'll come in and close that off. And of course we want this outside of our script tag, so let's throw it down here, and you can see say hello is right here. If we click on it, an alert pops up that says hello. Okay, so that's one way to execute code from inside of here. And you can also see here that if we do not have this guy inside of here and we reload it and click on hello, what it's going to do is if you were farther down inside of the page and you clicked on that, it's going to reload the page. So one way to keep it from reloading the page is to put JavaScript void inside of there. That keeps everything nice and it won't have the page jumping all over the place. So now what we can do is we could also come in and do another one of these guys. So let's just copy this. And in this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this function that I have up inside of this script and have it execute instead. So I'm going to have on click again, but in this situation, I'm going to call open alert, which is the name of my function. And here I'll say something a little bit different like hi, and we can have this just be say something. And if we reload that, you're going to see say something pops up. We click on that, it's going to say hi, how are you, like that. And if we click on say hello, it's still going to open up hello. So here we are calling or performing some inline JavaScript, and here we are actually calling our function, and you can see exactly how that operates. Now let's come in here and do a little bit more advanced stuff. So what I'm going to do here is show you a whole bunch of different ways of handling events. We can perform different operations on mouse over, and that just means that they put the mouse over top of this link and we want to do something. Well, one of the things we want to do is, let's say we want to change the style of this link. We can change the style right like this. We can change it to red, for example. Whenever they put the mouse over it, it's going to change it to red. We could also have an event trigger whenever the mouse moves off of my link, and to do that you call on mouse out, and whenever they take the mouse off of there, I'm going to say I want to change the style color again, but this time make sure you keep all of these little periods inside of here. Let's say in this situation I want to change the color to blue. We could also perform a different action if they double click on our link. Do this, and in that situation let's say we want to change the text, and I'm going to put single quotes inside of here so it doesn't get confused, and double quotes close that off. And then we could do an on mouse down, which means they pressed and held down on the mouse on top of our link, and this one's going to be text again, keep it simple, close that off. And then also on mouse up equal to, and then we can say this text, and then that'll close that off. And then let's just give this a name like make me red and reload it. And you can see when I put the mouse over it, it turns red. Whenever I pull off of it, it turns blue. If I double click on it, you can see it's going and popping a little message up here. You double click me, you can't really see it because of this. Here you can see when I press down on it, don't press too hard, pops up, and whenever I take it off it says thank you. So a whole bunch of other different things we can work with. Now let's go and mess around with some inputs and see exactly how we can mess with those. So we'll go input type is equal to text, and we can say something like on change event. There's another event. In the situation in which there is a change in my input element, I'm going to create a new variable and I'm going to call it data entered. And if I want to get the value that was entered, I can go document dot get element by ID, and then I just tell it whatever the ID of the element that I want to pull the text from is, and that's random input. And then if I want to actually get the value that is inside of there, I just say value, right like that. Then before I close off those double quotes, I could go alert, and I could do something like user typed. And then if I wanted to output what they typed, I could go data entered, and let's spell data entered right. And then we can close that off and put a semicolon inside of there and reload it. And you can see right here, there is the input, and I could say hello, whatever you, there it is. And it's been changed, and the onChange event triggers whenever I leave, and you can see right there it says user typed hello you. It's another way to get information and events and how to work with these different HTML elements. You could also mess around with some ways of finding out what keys they clicked on the keyboard. So let's create a form here and the action and have it just go nowhere because we're just playing around here. And I can go ID and let's make the name of this sample form like that, and then inside of it let's throw some input boxes, and let's give this an ID equal to character input, and of course this is going to be text like that. You can see we can play around, have some of them be single quotes, some of them be double quotes, whatever you'd like. And then let's throw a paragraph tag inside of this as well. ID is equal to, and this is going to put my key data for the keys that they typed on the keyboard, and I don't need to do anything with that. And what the heck, I might as well also show you some other neat events we can do. Do another input type, and this one's going to be equal to submit that, and let's go and also throw in a reset button. There's all kinds of different events we can catch. So there's a reset. Let's do a couple more. Let's go image and play around with some images as well. There's a ping file, and we'll give this the ID equal to logo. There's an image file we'll be able to trigger some events on. Let's go and get some button events. So I'm going to show you all the JavaScript for these all at one time. So we'll call this logo button, and then we'll go and create another input box. We're going to call this mouse input. Yeah, I'm going to show you some ways of pulling some mouse events off here as well. Type is equal to text, and let's have the size of this be equal to 30. And I'm also going to show you the mouse X and Y positions so we can track how they change. So throw another input box inside of there, and then we'll also show the mouse Y position on the screen. So as the mouse moves around on the screen, these are going to be updated. And then what we're going to do is let's go and open up another script window here underneath of it. It's always a good idea to keep your script code underneath of the HTML, and we'll just create this. And let's make this stuff actually work. So I'm going to create a function here first, and it's called getCharacter, and it's going to catch an event that we're going to be able to do some things with. And we're going to assign some different events to trigger this getCharacter function right here. What we want to do here first is we want to call event which like this, and this is going to return the key or the mouse button that was clicked. And that's what event which returns. So we want to verify that if this function is called, that is not equal to null, which means it has no value. And if it does, we're going to return string, and then we're going to call from character code and get the key code that they clicked on. And this is going to be here for Internet Explorer. Else if event.which is not equal to 0 and event character code is not equal to 0. In that situation, we want to return string, and we're going to call from character code again, except in this situation, we're going to call event which. And this is going to work for all the other browsers. Else, if we get down here, then we know we have a problem. We're just going to return null. And the way that we would get down to this point is if they clicked on something on their keyboard, a character that doesn't have a character code that we can output on the screen. So that's what this covers. So right here we're handling for Internet Explorer, and right here we are handling for every other browser, and then here they clicked on some special character we can't work with. So that's what's going on there. Now we are going to assign some events that we want to trigger or we want to pay attention to. To do that, we're going to go document, get element by ID once again, and character input is going to be the guy that we want to trigger here. So character input, which is this guy up here. So we're looking at the character input element, and we're saying that if the key is pressed, we want to do something. And the thing we want to do is we want to call this function right here, and it's going to get passed event information. We're going to create a new variable character, and we're going to pass into our getCharacter function we just created right here, event or window event. Again, this is for older versions of Internet Explorer we're trying to work here. And we're going to say if not a character, we want to return false. and that means a special key was clicked once again. Otherwise, what we want to do, if they clicked on something that does work, we want to go and get element by ID again, and this time we want to come up here to the key data, this paragraph right here, and input or output some information about the character that they clicked on. So just pay reference to key data like that. And what we want to do in this situation is a paragraph, so we want to put some information inside of there. So we have to use inner HTML. If it's a tag, we want to use inner HTML. Otherwise, if it's an input element or something like that, we would use value. And we'll just say character, and then keep this simple, was clicked. And then after we get through this, we can say return true. And if we rewind this, there's a whole bunch of different information right here. And this is the input box that we just put the on key press event on side of there. And you can see F was clicked, G was clicked, J was clicked. We can go and do something, see if we can find something. Yeah, I don't know. There's something here on the keyboard that it's not going to recognize. There, it didn't do anything that time. Okay, so that's how that works. Now let's go and play around with some other different events that we can work with here. Let's say we want to change text whenever the input is going to gain focus. So once again, this guy right here, when it gains focus, when it means I clicked inside of there, I want to type something inside of there, I want to do something. No problem, we can just go to document, get element by ID once again. And in this situation, we are going to be putting this on character input, just like before. You can add multiple different events to just one thing. So we can say on focus, like that, whenever somebody clicks in it. Well, then we want to execute some additional functions. So an event gets passed inside of there once again. And this time we want to go document and, of course, get element by ID. You can do that over and over and over again. And this time, call key data, that, just like we did right here. We're going to put some information inside this paragraph tag, and this again we're going to use inner HTML is equal to, and then we'll just put something like input gained focus, and you can see input gained focus pops up right there. We could also catch if the user ever came in here and selected any text, and to do that, let's just leave this be character input and on select. And in a situation in which text is selected in the input, we could come down here. And again, this is going to update the little paragraph we have there. And we could say something like text selected and reload that. And we can just type some text in there. You can see how that's working. And then like this, text selected. There's a whole bunch of different events. Let's play around with our logo here and have it do a couple different things. Again, pretty much exactly the same thing, except this time we're going to target that, and it is called logo button, and we're going to say on click. So when our logo button is clicked on, this guy right here, we can go and get our logo, and we can go up here. You can see right here where I have show. I have it defined that it's going to display, and then I'm going to have another one that's going to hide the logo. So just a little bit of CSS inside of there. So if I want to assign that class name to it, just go class name is equal to, and you can also come in here and do it this way, and equal to, and have it be show, and that means we're going to have to go and make it disappear. I'll show you how to do that. Let's come in again, and this time we're going to target our logo, which has the ID of logo, and we're going to say on mouse over. We want to do something. Let's have it go and change a couple different things. So like this, and get element, and we're going to target the logo in this situation, and we're going to change the source on this. So source is equal to, and then I'm going to of course have to have a different version of the logo to bring inside of there, but I have another version of the logo that is going to be horizontal position, so it's going to switch from horizontal to vertical whenever you put the mouse over top of it. And then also I can have another thing. Let's target mouse input, this. And in this situation, it's an input that we're going to be changing, so I have to change that from inner HTML to value. And then we could say something like mouse over image, so we can display that. And make sure we go in here and put ping inside of there. That caused a little bit of a bug. Reload, and now you can see it jumped from horizontal to vertical. And we can go get logo, see what that does. Doesn't do anything yet. Let's go and add a couple more events here. Let's say, let's just copy this, and let's say whenever they take the mouse off, that it's going to switch back to the way that it was. So again, mouse out instead of over. And here we'll change our logo back to its original form, which is just ntt logo.ping. And mouse input again, and value, and then we'll say something like mouse left image. Reload it. And now we can switch it back and forth, and you can also see this is changing down here. Let's go and also make this disappear whenever the image is clicked on. So let's go and get this, throw that inside of there, change this to hidden. Remember the CSS that I had there? Sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit and doing this out of my head. So now whenever they go and click on let's make it the logo itself, that's going to make the logo disappear. Logo disappeared, get logo comes back. Now let's go set it up so that whenever the mouse moves around on our document, that it's going to automatically update the mouse X and mouse Y input text boxes we have here. So to do that, we go document and then we'll go body, and we're looking for another event called onMouseMove, and we'll call function. Let's make this E just to keep it simple. Then we're going to have to do some things here for Internet Explorer. E equal to E or window event. Now what we're going to want to do is get the page X and page Y positions, which are going to be the mouse positions relative to the HTML document. So we'll go page X is equal to E